Film styles are techniques employed by the director to make a film their own, whether it's of prop design, sound design, lighting, framing, and composition. Many directors will use these aspects of film style to make their movie stand out. In 1950, film director Akira Kurosawa introduced the film world to Rashomon, a film that uses a unique film style to examine the truth and the darker side of human nature. In Kurosawa's own words, the story goes into the depths of the human heart, laying bare its dark complexities and bizarre twists. These strange impulses of the human heart would be expressed through the use of an elaborately fashioned play of light and shadow. The film Rashomon is about a trial involving a rape and a murder. 3 characters discuss 3 different versions of the same story. We experience the telling of a story within a story. Rashomon's style was so distinct, it ended up with its own name once critics began to note its influence on other films. It was the Rashomon Effect. Akira Kurosawa believed that human beings are unable to be honest with themselves about themselves. So what is the Rashomon Effect? Well, this refers to different character perspectives that hold different truths on a single event, making the audience question the validity of a story said by a character. This effect is carried into present-day films, making us ask just how pervasive the effect is in modern cinema, and or whether or not other films have built on it. Rashomon has certainly influenced film over the years, but to a certain extent. Films take inspiration from other films in the past. They take styles and make them work for their own narratives. The film Courage Under Fire corresponds very closely with the Rashomon Effect in that people are investigated to determine whether a female officer, Karen Walden, is worthy of receiving the Medal of Honor for her bravery in a mission in the First Persian Gulf War. The Rashomon Effect is evident from the very beginning of the film, as Officer Nat Sterling, played by Denzel Washington, interviews the various soldiers that were with Officer Walden on that fateful day to recollect exactly what happened. We're presented the various versions of events, first from Ilario, played by Matt Damon.
In the course of the incident, did she display any doubt, any fear when she had to make these life and death decisions?
No, never. She just made them.
Just like that?
Just like that.
Then we get a very different version of events from Monfreeze.
She was afraid, Colonel. That's the bottom line on you, Captain Walden. She was a fucking coward, sir.
This is followed by a shell-shocked Altemeyer who cannot speak.
You and Monfreeze what, Stephen?
Jesus.
What? What is it? Tell me, son, please. What is it?
Jesus.
What?
Fire.
What fire?
Oh, Jesus.
Officer Serling sees the stories are not adding up and finally goes back to Ilario, who breaks down and tells the real story that the soldiers in the unit have covered up.
I didn't even want to touch it.
Unlike Rashomon, Courage Under Fire is a straight narrative using predictable shots with very little film style other than some battle scenes that light up the sky at the beginning of the film. Also, there is no ambiguity at the end of the film. Through the interviews, Officer Serling arrives at the truth. Hero stars Jet Li, an actor known for his martial artistry which plays in the movie. Like Rashomon, there are different versions of a story of the character Nameless, who says he has slain 3 would-be assassins of the king. Like each character in Rashomon, the character Nameless in Hero recounts his version of the story. The king gives a hypothetical version of the same story that Nameless is told, but the version is different. Nameless then tells the truth of the true story, which is to assassinate the king himself. The complexity of the story telling to arrive at the truth is brought about in the style of the narrative. Besides the carefully choreographed fight scenes, director Imao Jang uses color to evoke the different moods of the story, much in the same way Akira Kurosawa uses light in the forest scenes in Rashomon. Perhaps this is the best example of how Rashomon's film style and narrative are influential in the making of the film Hero. In Vantage Point, we see the attempted assassination of the American president, told and retold from several different perspectives. The film technique used in Vantage Point is to re-show the events leading up to the assassination, but each time the audience learns some new details. The ultimate goal, like Courage Under Fire, is to show different versions of the story that one upon one build our understanding of the situation, rather than confusing or complicating it. Vantage Point has a bit of a Groundhog Day feel, where we keep going back to the beginning of the story. In Vantage Point, the screen turns white and we go back to 12 noon, 23 minutes before the attempted assassination. In the last half of the film, the different perspectives come together and the story plays out to reveal what ultimately happens. The narrative technique does not work nearly as well as other films that are influenced by the Rashomon Effect, as it has more of the feel of an action movie rather than telling a story from a clever narrative perspective. The film Gone Girl is the story of a wife's disappearance which comes under the spotlight of the media, ultimately questioning whether the husband is in fact responsible for her disappearance. The movie involves the husband and wife telling their version of the story to try and figure out why she has gone missing. The Rashomon Effect once again is played out in this drama thriller. The two main characters, Nick and Amy Dunn, seem to live a happy enough life until Amy disappears and we start to learn about the story of how their marriage began to unravel. Their complicated relationship and parallel realities are shown by the narration of events from Amy and Nick's point of view. At this point in the film, she has disappeared on the morning of their 5th anniversary. We first get a version of the story from Amy. The narrative is almost like the idea of the character speaking from the grave. Sounds familiar, just like the dead samurai in Rashomon telling a story through the medium. Amy's version of this truth is also prefaced by a shot of her writing in her diary, and as Nick learns, it is the tool she uses to frame him. But as time goes on, Amy tells us the real truth of her disappearance, what she hopes to accomplish by it. The film is extremely clever in its use of plot devices to tell their stories, using Amy's diary that has been left behind to help us piece together her version of her disappearance. Nick uses his twin sister as a sounding board to try to figure out what has happened to Amy and how he is being manipulated. Like Rashomon, the use of light plays a narrative role. Nick is hiding in his house like he is in a cave, escaping the scrutiny of the media. His face is half lit, giving us a sense of not knowing if he's good or bad. Towards the end of the film, when we have learned the truth of the story, Nick's face appears to be more lit. There is no question that when Rashomon was released at the Venice Film Festival, it stunned audiences. No one had ever seen a film quite like this, not only for Kurosawa's remarkable shots into the sun and other camera movements that created visually remarkable imagery, but also for its narrative technique of flashbacks which later became known as the Rashomon Effect. Nick Redfern has argued that the film style in Rashomon is a deliberately and precisely constructed artwork in which form and content work together to create an epistemological puzzle for the viewer. Stephen Prince has stated that countless movies and television shows have remade Rashomon by incorporating the contradictory flashbacks of unreliable narrators. In addition, Prince goes on to say that the Rashomon Effect has influenced not just the moving image, but culture at large. The Rashomon Effect has symbolized general cultural notions about the relativity of truth and the unreliability of memory. In the legal community, lawyers often speak of the Rashomon Effect when witnesses confront them with conflicting testimonies. Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon and this narrative style known as the Rashomon Effect has been a clear influence on these 4 particular films. Each film has altered the Rashomon Effect to its own use to create a new and innovative narrative in filmmaking today.